Hey y'all, welcome to Psychedelic Week. This is the first day of my list of hippie holidays, starting with Bicycle Day. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the history of Bicycle Day and how it's celebrated now. We're also going to be discussing each chakra every day of this week, so today we'll be focusing on the Root Chakra. And we'll do different forms of self-care relating to that chakra. So you'll see a little bit more of what I mean later in the video. So Bicycle Day originally starts with the very first LSD trip, which was by Albert Hoffman. He was the chemist who stumbled upon LSD looking for medicines that could help with blood dilation and heart health, but he accidentally discovered the now famous LSD. And on April 16th, 1943, he accidentally ingested a little bit. I think it was on a Friday, and he noticed something was going on. Maybe he tripped a little bit. He might have absorbed some through his fingers. That's what's suspected. And it was on the following Monday, April 19th, 1943, Albert Hoffman ingested LSD for the very first time intentionally. What he thought was a tiny dose at the time was 250 micrograms. And as psychonauts know now, that is not a light dose to be messed around with, especially if you're not expecting it. So as his trip was starting to come on and he realized that it was going to be a really intense experience, he knew he needed to go home from the lab, so he rode his bike home, and he was tripping at this point. So that's why Bicycle Day is associated with the bicycle. So the very first Bicycle Day celebrating this event in psychedelic history was in 1985. It was a college professor named Thomas Roberts who held a very small celebration in his home in honor of this event. He originally did want to celebrate the 16th, since that is technically the first acid trip in history, but because he wanted to have a party and the 19th fell on a weekend, that was what he went with. So I think that was the right choice in the end too. And the bicycle thing has become pretty iconic. Over the years, more and more people heard about Bicycle Day and it gained steam around the world. And Bicycle Day is often celebrated as its own version of 420, 4LSD. But that's not the only way to celebrate. Some people simply acknowledge LSD as the historical game changer that it was. You can also celebrate by listening to psychedelic music, looking at psychedelic art, or watching movies or documentaries. There are a lot of different ways to celebrate it. In more recent years, it's become a lot more organized. You'll have like museums doing exhibits dedicated to Bicycle Day. And I know every year Alex Gray does a whole like video segment from Cosm talking about Bicycle Day. So I will put the link for that in the description. In honor of Albert Hoffman, I want to show you a short clip of him speaking about the mystical experience.
LSD experience has something to do to the view as children. If the world of LSD is close to that of children. And every human being has a possibility of mystical experience. It's a visionary experience of the world, of our life, and so is nothing artificial. It is really inborn. It is in the subconscious of every human being, I believe. Because we have been children, everybody, and we have had this worldview. And in addition to the vision of a child, we have the consciousness more. And this can be complementary. We have the consciousness and we have this visionary experience of the world that gives a deeper, even a deeper experience of life. I think it is very difficult to describe, to put in words the experience. I think it's impossible. Huck says that we should create a new language for the mystical experience.
There's a story about the very first time that the Beatles ever smoked weed in 1964, and Paul McCartney described it as a mystical experience. Check this out.
I thought I got the meaning to life that night. And I went around trying to find our roadie. Mal, get a pencil and a paper. I've got it. And Mal, because we're a bit out of it, he couldn't find a pencil and paper anywhere. But eventually, in the end of the evening, he found it, and I wrote down my message for the universe, you know. I said, now keep that in your pocket. And Mal did. The next morning, he said, hey, Paul, he said, do you want to see that? I said, what? He said, that bit of paper. Oh, yeah. And I'd written, there are 7 levels.
Seems pretty vague, right? But considering that I've had an experience of this serpentine, spiraling energy rising up different levels as it goes up my spine, this rings a bell. And there also seems to be something with cannabis that's bringing this out. I think what Paul McCartney is talking about has to do with the 7 chakras, and a lot of good things come in 7 levels. The basis of the major scale in music is 7 notes, and this is the basis for millions of songs. And there's also a very similar system in the Indian classical music. Whenever Isaac Newton was doing his pioneering research in the science of light, he originally had 5 colors, but then he added orange and indigo to make it 7 because it matched the notes of the major scale. Often because of this, each chakra gets associated with its own color and with its own note in the major scale. I don't take the association of specific notes and colors too seriously. There are some exceptions, but for the most part, I see it as a symbolic map of something that's really going on in the subtle body. Also like a tool to help you meditate on these centers. The chakra we're going to talk about today on day 1 of Psychedelic Week is the root chakra. But I actually want to talk a little bit about chakras, and just so you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from with all of this. The way I look at chakras are like succeeding levels of biological existence. So the root chakra being our first one, I associate that with the level of our being that is cells. It's that extremely primal level of our existence that is directly connected to the material plane of existence. It's kind of like when you look at the structure of the brain, you can see how it's succeeding layers that have built on the previous ones as evolution goes on. Like our brainstem is what is left over from when we were reptiles. It's the reptilian mind that's at the bottom of our brainstem, and as we evolved, we grew more layers to our brain that were more sophisticated. So I see the chakras in the same way. It's like the base levels of our existence, and then as we evolved into more complex organisms, we reached these higher and higher chakras. So the root being the level of the blood and the cells, and the second chakra being the level of mammals, and then the third chakra being an individual, so on and so forth. Tim Leary and Robert Anton Wilson were the people who kind of put forward this idea of circuits instead of calling chakras, which comes from the Hindu system, thousands of years old. It's kind of like a modern way of putting it is considering them to be circuits of our existence. And before we really get into it, I want to read something to you. It's a quote from somebody who is a Sanskrit scholar and their thoughts on how we interpret chakras in the West and in modern day times. Because the truth is, there isn't that much concrete information about the chakras. A lot of people like myself have experience of them. There's also so many different chakra systems out there. But in my eyes, the 7-level system seems to be the one that I've verified for myself. But I want to read you this quote because I thought it was a pretty balanced way to look at the chakras. So they said, "This might be the most important point. English sources tend to present the chakra system as an existential fact, using descriptive language like the Muladhara chakra is at the base of the spine and it is red, and so on. But in most of the original Sanskrit sources, we're not being taught about the way things are. We're being given a specific yogic practice. We are to visualize a subtle object made of colored light, shaped like a lotus or a spinning wheel, at a specific point in the body, and then activate mantric syllables in it for specific purposes. The texts are prescriptive. They tell you what you ought to do to achieve a specific goal by mystical means. When the literal Sanskrit reads, in its elliptical fashion, 4-petaled red lotus at the base of the body, we're supposed to understand the yogi ought to visualize a 4-petaled lotus. So that's the thing, is this isn't meant to be taken so literal. It's more of a map, and it's like a tool for your meditation. It's like a way to concentrate on these specific centers in the body. But I also think that there is something to these specific symbols and colors that they use. Also, what I'm saying is I don't want to speak with confidence using an oversimplified version of the chakras, which I think is why a lot of this stuff sounds so silly to people who are somewhat skeptical about this. So what I will be sharing with you is based on a lot of my personal experience though. So the root chakra is based at the bottom of your spine and it is in the area of the perineum. And so, yeah, when you're meditating on this chakra, you imagine kind of like a point of light or a sphere of energy in this area of the perineum. This chakra is associated with your primal instincts of security, safety, and being present and feeling like you belong where you are. It has to do with our connection to the earth, and it's in the realm of the physical plane. There's a presence that comes with rootedness and feeling like you're connected to the earth. In Kundalini, there's said to be 2 currents, one masculine and one feminine. And Kundalini energy as a whole is the weaving together of these 2 energies. And the masculine energy is rising from the root, going up your spine, and the feminine energy is coming in from the cosmos and going down through your crown and down. And it's a combination of these 2 that make up Kundalini as a whole. You could also think of this as positive and negative currents, or like yin and yang. When this chakra is unbalanced or out of whack, you feel anxious, insecure, and unsafe a lot of the time, and you just feel kind of ungrounded. I mean, that's a pretty literal way of saying it, but that's also how it feels. Like you're living in survival mode all the time, always in fight or flight. When you start to do Kundalini-based meditations, you start to become more aware of these centers and when they feel like they might be imbalanced. It's not all the time, but sometimes I can feel a physical sensation whenever I feel like one of these chakra centers is out of balance. Even if you don't feel the chakras or energy or anything like that, you can still recognize the aspects of consciousness that these are related to. Like if you feel ungrounded, you don't have to feel an energy ball inside of you to know that you feel ungrounded. So there's always a way to monitor them. So I'm going to share with you some of the things that I feel help whenever you're feeling unrooted. And I'm very familiar with this. This is probably the chakra that I have struggled with the most, because after my experience on LSD of cosmic consciousness and Kundalini, I actually felt like I was a total space cadet and like totally unrooted. I just was blasted so deep into space that it took me a really long time to actually settle down back into the piece of clay of earth that I really am. There's a multitude of different ways to balance the chakra, but I'm going to share with you the ones that I feel really help me. And I believe that it's a combination of doing all of these things that really helps. So the first is sound meditation. I often meditate to this guy on YouTube called Temple Sounds. He does Tibetan singing bowls while also doing a guided meditation. The meditation is focusing on the physical area of the chakra, but it's also talking about these different aspects of being that are related to it. So he'll be telling you to focus on that area, but he'll also be kind of giving you words of affirmation and saying like you feel secure, you feel like you belong, and just kind of reinforcing the aspect of consciousness that are related to all of that. I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to check that out, and I'll be doing it with you today. The other thing that has a rooting effect is drumming. There's something primal and grounding about drumming. It has to like connect us to our ancestors or connect us to something super primal and human. One time I was stoned and drumming, and I saw this chamber. It was like a 4-section grid, and I felt like the beat and stuff that I was playing was modulating this grid, and it was also red. So it felt like I was looking inside of some kind of spiritual heart. Something about the grid was also very grounding, and it actually resonates with when you see the Hindu depiction of the root chakra. They show it as a lotus with 4 red petals. And so I think this is a good example of how the map that you see of the chakras isn't a literal thing, but these 4 petals could represent this kind of grid-like energy that I was seeing. Like, I think that there's something really there, and that these symbols are pointing to them. Some people say you should wear red to balance the chakra. So I'm not totally sure if I'm sold on this idea, even though I'm wearing red right now, but I think it has more to do with like the intention and the ritual behind it. It's kind of like another tool to help you focus on that particular aspect. Another great way to ground is to literally touch the earth. Take off your socks and go stand on the ground and just feel yourself connecting to the earth. I like to imagine a light going from the top of my head down through my feet and then going into the earth as deep as possible, and imagining that you have some kind of roots that are actually going into the earth and they're made of light, and that also these roots are kind of rising from the earth up into you and providing you with stability. And then just meditating on this feeling, and also thinking about how the earth provides everything that we need to survive. It has all the air we need, all the water, all the food, all the other things that we need for life are right here on earth. So just kind of rest in that feeling of being nurtured by the earth. Also, when your feet are touching the ground, really enjoy that and like dig into it and focus on the sensation of the ground touching your feet. Another thing that I didn't learn until later on is that you can get grounded by being around other people, being around your close friends and family especially, and especially if those people have a very grounded energy about them. Someone with grounded energy can be like an oasis for somebody who's feeling unrooted. People in the past have told me that I give off like an earthy, grounded energy, and I thought this was pretty ironic because at that time I felt like I was totally uprooted and like floating through space, like a total space cadet. But I think maybe I was compensating for that, which the whole cosmic consciousness was cool, but it came at a cost if you're ungrounded. I feel way more grounded now though, for sure. The other way to ground yourself is through yoga exercises and breath exercises that specifically deal with this chakra. There's a YouTube video I know about in particular, and I'm gonna put the link to that in the description. And I'm gonna be doing that with you guys today and doing all of these grounding things that I'm talking about, because that's what we're doing today for Psychedelic Week. Well, that's about it for this video. Happy Bicycle Day, and I hope y'all feel grounded. You deserve to feel secure, safe, and present to enjoy what lies ahead. These Psychedelic Week videos are going on its own playlist of the same name, and so I'll be posting videos every day this week there. So I'll see you on the next video. Hope you enjoyed this.